Oh, okay.
That's fine. You guys get there? I don't know if there's any good way to dress this up. I don't think it's gonna. It's got that. Yeah, it's that's not.
Right, stick it right under here.
Yeah. We're gonna wait till people come though. You gonna start?
Okay, Shadera, did you want to?
Yeah.
You wanted to have a little start?
Good afternoon. My name is Shadera Kilfoy Flores. I am the current chair of Madison's Police Civilian Oversight Board. It is with great pleasure to introduce our independent monitor, Robin Copley.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Robin Copley, and I am Madison's independent police monitor. I'm joined by Greg Galimbic, the Office of the Independent Monitor's recently hired data analyst, and I have two major updates from the OIM. First, backlogged and recent complaints submitted to the OIM have been recorded and categorized into OIM's intake queue. With this queue in place, the OIM will begin its first investigations, maintaining 3 at a time. The first 3 investigations provide a convenient cross-reference of the types of investigations the OIM will undertake. One of the investigations will be focused on a department-wide policy, one will be focused on a regular police procedure, and another will be a retrospective review of a past investigation. To protect the privacy of the intakes, I will not go into further detail of the specific investigations. However, I want to emphasize their varied scope. The OIM is an arm of police oversight, not police discipline. It follows then that 2 of the investigations will be focused on MPD policy and procedure, respectively. The third investigation concerns police discipline, but the purpose of the investigation will be to analyze the process and policies that led to that disciplinary decision. The Madison Police Department has boldly and honorably expressed support for civilian oversight and policing accountability. Although allowing a thorough and critical review of past controversial outcomes is a huge step in building bridges to healing between the community and its police department. Second, I am proud to announce that the OIM is collaborating with a team of scientists led by M. Keith Chen of UCLA on the OIM's first data-driven report. Utilizing anonymized cell phone data, the team will be able to determine where officers spend most of their time on patrol. Specifically, they will be seeking to examine whether MPD officers are disproportionately patrolling in neighborhoods with a high percentage of Black, Asian, and Hispanic residents, and whether these neighborhood-level disparities persist after controlling for socioeconomic factors and crime-driven demand for police services. Across a set of 21 American cities, it was found that such patterns of increased police presence accounted for 57% of the increased arrest rate in predominantly Black neighborhoods. In Madison in 2023, a Black individual was over 8 times more likely to be arrested at least once than a white individual. Benchmarked to population numbers, a disorderly conduct charge was over 13 times more likely to be against someone who was Black than someone who was white. The 2013 Race to Equity report first brought public awareness to the staggering racial disparities in arrest and incarceration rates here. A subsequent 2020 Capital Times article entitled "None of This Has Changed" reported that the racial disparities in arrests and incarceration had remained unchanged, and that remains true to this day. The existence of the Office of the Independent Monitor provides a means to work towards rectifying this situation. The sources of the racial disparities need to be understood, to be addressed, and to move forward with social and racial equity. And this is the current top priority of our data analyst. We will both be available to answer questions on both of our announcements. I can answer questions on the investigations, and Greg can take on the data-driven report.
I have two questions for you. Going forward, when someone files a complaint with the Madison Police Department proper or with the PFC, the Police and Fire Commission, will they be notified at that time that they have the opportunity to also file a complaint with the Independent Monitor?
I won't be able to speak to whether MPD and PFC would be alerting the public towards our presence. I can only work towards alerting the public towards our presence as I am now. So largely I want to draw the distinction, though, between a intake that is given to PSNIA and PFC compared to those that are given to this office. Specifically, a complaint that is filed with PSNIA is one that is going to be investigated internally by the Madison Police Department in order to determine whether or not an SOP has been violated. A PFC complaint will be pursuing some kind of disciplinary action as a result of that. OIM is completely removed from those two areas. What OIM seeks to do is to look for policy changes that can be made to the actual procedures and policies of the Madison Police Department to better represent the community and to build that trust between the community and its police department. So as a result of that, we're not actually going to be doing a lot of disciplinary investigations into active incidents. What we are doing is we are looking to see what it is that, where there's friction between the community and the police department and how we can bridge that gap.
Will you be, my second question, will you be obtaining and reviewing the complaints that are filed with the police department and not with you?
If there is a necessity, there will obviously be audits that are regularly done of, in particular, PSNIA investigations. However, OIM is going to have its own priorities beyond that of what MPD's internal affairs priorities may be. Like as I stated earlier, the OIM's investigations are going to be focused predominantly on policy and procedure, as well as past decisions and actions that were taken by the board or by the department. So as a result of that, we're not going to be looking into like active, open, critical incidents in the moment that they're happening, as much as we're going to be analyzing how those open and critical incidents are investigated.
But when there's a investigation, they put out a letter about what has been determined. Will you be obtaining those end of the process determinations to see what was alleged, what was decided, what the process was?
Yes.
As a matter of course.
Yes, like just as a matter of oversight of MPD's internal disciplinary system, like we would be reviewing what PSNIA is putting out as far as its findings, as far as sustained or unsustained of complaints, as well as PFC's own internal processes and decisions.
Excuse me, but will they be putting out more than they do now? Now they only put out an investigation if a determination was made that discipline was necessary. Like for one quarter period that I looked at in 2023, there were 71 complaints that were filed against police officers. One led to discipline. One complaint was publicly acknowledged. Will you look at all 71 somewhere, somehow?
Well, ultimately, we are a very small office. Like we're not going to be able to do a complete department-wide audit of several years in the past, or even have the time or manpower in order to do so. what we would instead be doing is we would be looking for the trends themselves. So, for example, seeing 71 complaints that are filed and only one is sustained, that shows that, okay, there might be something to look in here, because if there's 70 non-sustained complaints, that still means that 70 people complained about something. So what we're aiming to do is to find out what the public is actually complaining about, rather than litigating the complaints, in order to find a policy solution that would eliminate the source of those complaints. Does that make sense?
It does, although I don't see how you could find out what they're complaining about unless you actually obtain records from each individual complaint.
Yeah, no, that's the thing, is that we could, if we're opening an investigation specifically into those items. But as I was saying, there's only 3 of us. I would be handling the internal investigations. Greg would be handling database investigations, and the Madison Police Department is a very large department. So ultimately, what our scope and focus is going to be led by is what the will of the public is. That's where we will be leaning heavily on the Police Civilian Oversight Board and its connections to community-based organizations, as well as consistent community listening sessions offered to the public, so that we can get a better understanding of what the public actually wants to see us looking into when it comes to the Madison Police Department.
Thank you.
And actually,
Yes.
like a minor addendum, Bill, the pattern that you noted was actually also one that was noticed by OIR, and they made a set of recommendations to try to address that. And part of our role is to ensure that those recommendations get implemented. And via the memorandum of understanding that Robin negotiated with MPD, we would have access to all those records, even if it was a not sustained complaint.
How many complaints have you received since the rollout of the official process a couple weeks ago?
Since the rollout itself, I think we've only had 1 walk-in. I believe that we've had another email, but I don't recall if it came the same week of. I don't remember if it was right before or right after we did the announcement of the rollout.
Did a walk-in, someone made a complaint when they came into the office?
Yes.
And that just those 2 seconds.
Yes, since last week, yeah.
And then this third investigation, by that, you're reviewing a past disciplinary case within the department.
Yes.
And just how that was handled.
Mm-hmm.
How long ago was the disciplinary case?
Several years.
Give or take, like what year?
Anybody else?
I have a question. Alder Amani Latimer here. So will individual citizens be able to file complaints directly with you if they don't want to go through the process of the other boards that are in place? And how will it differ for citizens? So from an average citizen, can you walk through how that might be different? And then in some of the situations that I know this grew out of, such as Tony Robinson, how would that be different for the average citizen? How will they see it differently?
Right, so the public can submit complaints to the OIM. We have our forms available on the Office of the Independent Monitor website. Those are in Spanish, Hmong, and English, and there is a fillable form there. We would request that the public fill out those intake forms and then email them to oim@cityofmadison.com. As far as the difference between our complaint process and that of PFC or MPDs, is specifically that this is looking at where the policy and procedural failures might have impacted this person in a disparate way. That's largely where the primary focus of our investigations are going, because that can lead to policy changes and ultimately we can affect justice. So the way that this complaint process then goes is it has to be very collaborative with the intakes that come in. When we receive a complaint, we will first evaluate it for completeness. If there's any details that we still need in order to be able to move forward with it, we'll reach out to the complaint to get that finished and selected and put into our complaint queue. When it comes up for their turn, or that complaint comes up on the queue, then we will have another meeting with the intake, and we will lay out a specialized, unique schedule for that person. Not everybody is available between the hours of 9 and 5, Mondays through Fridays. So it's necessary to meet the public where they're at, and there's not going to be a single model that works for every single person. So it's really important that first we meet with the people, the intake, we make sure that they understand what it is that we're going to be doing, specifically like that we are not pursuing a police discipline. We don't have that power. Instead, what we're looking for is policy failures, policy successes, and policy recommendations. Policy, policy, policy. And then we go through with them what the ultimate outcome of any kind of an OIM investigation would be, basically going through the kinds of rubrics and questions that we would be asking in a report, and explaining as much as we can throughout the process of essentially what other administrative remedies exist to the intake. Whether if they were to go to PSNIA, what would happen? If they were to go to PFC, what would happen? Because ultimately what we want to be is a door and a bridge into this into the city government for the public to come in and voice the concerns that they have regarding their police department. I'm sorry, does that answer your question?
Get to, as I was having a discussion with somebody today, specifically about some of the cases that have gone down where the city has paid out, and although we're legally correct, how the average citizen doesn't understand policy. They understand that somebody listens to me or not, is able to move things forward or not, was this justified or not.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to get at for the average Joe, not the
Right. I can understand how, rephrase that and try and clarify a little bit. I guess what I'm trying to say is that the thrust of the office's investigations is to find those policy-based solutions. But when the public is coming in, the difference that they're going to have from interacting with our office as compared to interacting with PSNIA or PFC is that they are going to be controlling the scope of the investigation that they want to see. Is that essentially, as far as like the office's jurisdiction allows, the intake will come in and direct us to where they want our attention. As opposed to PSNIA, they're very limited. They're looking at the code of conduct and the standard operating procedures. Was this policy followed to the T, or was it differentiated from? And with us, what we're going to be looking at is, all right, this is what the actions were taken. Was these actions taken as a result of the policy, or were these taken as a result of the individual? Can this be solved through training? Can this be solved through policy amendment? Those are the ultimate outcomes of our office, as opposed to disciplinary decisions or findings, such as in PSNIA. Mm-hmm.
Well, and to be very clear, the PFC does not do any sort of investigating. You present your case to the PFC that has all, with the information that you have. So this is different in that the OIM, the independent monitor, does investigating. The PFC does no investigating.
And with the data project, the cell phone data, MPD will give that to you under the MOU.
That's correct.
Yeah. And then how many sworn staff would be, like, how many of their cell phones roughly would be like part of this?
Greg, do you want to?
This is actually anonymized cell phone data that is purchased commercially. So it doesn't actually require anything, directly from NPD itself. Like with the cell phones, there's GPS data, and you can determine, okay, who is in the police station regularly, say at roll call time, and that is, clearly an officer, and then you can track, their activities subsequently. So that's the basis for that work.
Right. And so what period of time is it? This is like, or is this historic data?
It's historic data, and actually, like very recent data, like from this year, is incredibly expensive. So initially, we're starting out looking at 2017 to 2021.
Between that span of
Correct.
time.
Correct.
Got it.
Yeah.
And then you'll be able to know whose cell phone is an officer's cell phone.
Right. We won't know who the officer is, but we can differentiate that it's an officer's cell phone. And yeah. Oh, and actually, the first data that I've provided to the collaborators is GIS data that we did receive from MPD under the MOU.
All right, is everyone all good? Alder Tischler, anything?
No, but I do have another question that people ask, so I'll just go ahead and ask it, is what's going on that's taking so long for the Office of the Independent Monitor, from the public's perception, to get going? What were some of the things that you guys had to overcome, and how will that be different in the future?
So there was a lot to not necessarily overcome, but I would say to learn. This is the first office of its kind in Wisconsin, let alone the city. So building this up from the ground has been a learning experience and extremely humbling. Speaking with other agencies, oversight agencies across the country in the past couple of years, one of the most consistent things that we have heard has been envy of our system, in that we have both a monitor and a board. Several agencies across the country seem to have one or the other. And as a result of that, very few of the other agencies' models actually are good to translate into this one. So we had to build something new. And on top of that, it's also an extremely small office. When I came into this position, it was, me and a desk. And I wanted to make sure that, first of all, that I'm not just, going off of vibes when I'm creating something that the city has worked so hard for so many years to see actualized. So as far as some of the delays, probably the first and foremost was entirely on my own. I needed to learn more about Madison itself, what Madison felt is important in its oversight, and what it has been working towards through the ad hoc committee report and everything that had come before that. Next, we needed to also make sure that the board itself was trained. So in addition to just, myself, we also have a board of members of the community that I would be able to turn to and rely on, that would, assist with the community outreach, as well as providing that communal input when it comes to the creation of office policies and procedures. There were quite a few setbacks last year. Specifically, there was issues surrounding hiring. As my health deteriorated at the beginning of this year and I needed to leave for medical leave, I arrived back in June. We had hired both of our, fully staffed the office within 4 months, and we are rolling out in, as far as I can see in comparison to other jurisdictions, relatively quickly from the moment that we were incepted. I understand that it has been a long wait, and it has been probably a frustrating one for a lot of members of the community. And to those members of the community, I only have to say, we're open. Please come. We need your input. We need that emotion, and we need those people that are getting upset about how policing is done in this country and in this city to interact with us, because as it is right now, we are toothless without the community. We only have our data-driven priorities set by the community. So if we don't have that input from the community, then we don't know where to go in a way that the community wants us to. So to anyone that has felt that this process has not moved fast enough, to anyone that has felt that they have not felt heard, we're open and we're listening.
I strongly encourage alders to attend our PCOB meetings.
Have you had a chance to review the budget?
I'm sorry, the most recent one from,
Yes.
yes.
Do you feel that was enough funding to your efforts, or would you have liked more?
Well, obviously, I would have. I would like to see what I had originally requested. With this, even under the amendment, we're still reducing the full-time data analyst position down to 0.6, which is going to be frustrating and challenging, but it would be mortal to the office without the data analyst. So 0.6 is a lot better than 0.
And also, I just want to say, we really appreciate the work that Marsha Rummel, Sabrina Madison, and John Duncan put into writing that amendment.
One last question, that people, I'm just asking questions that people say, whatnot. So let's say council votes to put it on the chopping block, we're done, we're moving on. What difference does that make, would you say, in 20 years? What impact would that have, would you say? If we look down and we had a magic ball you could look into and take yourself 20 years down the road, we know stuff will happen again. What impact would that have?
Well, I don't think I really need to stretch my imagination too hard to imagine what it would look like. It would look like what led to this moment. Up till this, the calls for police accountability, the calls for police oversight, we know what will happen. There will be, people will get hurt. People will be killed. There will be decisions that people don't understand. There will be policies that were followed that nobody voted for. There's going to be a lot of confusion and disconnect between the public and their police department, and that will only embroil more and more resentment between the two entities. So if I were to imagine what life would be like 20 years from now without any kind of oversight, I shiver at the thought. There would be, especially with the way that things went last week, I think that the trend in this country requires police oversight now more than ever. And I think that if to do away with it now, after we have spent so long putting it up and getting it operational, would be a tremendous mistake.
And I'll add to that, Robin and I just returned from the NACOL conference, the National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement, where each year that I've attended the last 3 years, it has increased by hundreds. 400, 500, 600, 700. So this is a trend not only nationally but internationally to have police oversight, to have oversight of our jails, oversight of our prisons. In cities where the civilian oversight had been absolved, it ended up getting reinstated in those communities. So anywhere where that has somehow been taken away, the community has forced it to be back. And the trend nationally is for the legislature to move up in being a Delaware, Maryland, it's a state legislature to have oversight at the county level because there are so many small municipalities. 70% of all 18,000 police departments are 10 officers or less. And so when we're talking about real police accountability, that sometimes needs to be taken to a higher level, at a county level, rather than just a city level. We've seen that when police are called in, it's normally multiple municipalities. The Office of the Independent Monitor, only has, the ability to investigate Madison police, but our, greater surrounding areas might want to take a look at there being a greater need for there being, say, county oversight. So. Also, the trend nationally is 1% to 2% of the public safety budget. So Madison is actually getting an independent monitor for quite a discount compared to other places across the country. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you all for coming out.